Good to have you with us on the programme today. You're watching live from Paris on France 24, and it's time for today's Perspective. My guest today began his career in New York City, in fact, directing music videos before moving on to commercials, fashion shoots, advertising and album covers, his work appearing in publications right across the globe. He then, though, became fascinated by the environment, which led him away from his more commercial work to focus more on art and photography as a tool for social change. Now, he uses his pictures now as art for activism, if you like, combining his climbing and mountaineering skills to take images of his polar exploration trips and then spearheading media efforts in the Arctic. So he's become kind of a real figurehead then, fighting to warn people of the dangers of climate change. Sebastian Copeland joins me here on set. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme.
Well, thanks for having me here.
It's such a list of things, isn't it? I mean, it sounds like you kind of started
You did your homework.
I did my best. It was so many things. Started off doing the kind of polar exploration of photography, which to most of us might seem like hobbies.
Well, I mean, the photography is, of course, a training, and it was my career for a long time. So I was able to bring my interest in at-risk environment and use my tools, which is communicative tools and primarily visual, of course, and bring the poles to our kitchens and make us more aware of what's going on there.
And what about the polar exploration? I mean, was that something you were doing for fun at the beginning, or? It
was a childhood dream, honestly. I mean, I was always very adventurous, and I read accounts. Well, Jack London to begin with, and then, you know, a variety of other accounts, which led me to want to become a pole explorer when I was a child.
And how did you then manage to combine those two and take it to another level?
Well, it was just actually mostly the climate change debate that led me to the polar regions. I realized that I could actually combine my skills, my passions and interests, and bring them to communicate an urgent message of action.
So how lucky do you feel to be able to do that?
Well, it's a tremendous privilege to be able to do so, but it's also, you know, it's a reckoning of sorts, because you find yourself in environments that people are really disconnected with, not really fully understanding the connectivity of the polar regions to our everyday lives.
So climate change then, why is that such a passion?
The polar regions, for me, are really the focal point of my interests. They are, you know, the systemic transformations over there are transforming our lives. If the poles are melting, and if the ice was to be gone, we'd be 10 degrees Celsius higher on global temperatures, and humanity would not exist.
So what can you do, and what projects have you actually been involved in to raise awareness then?
Mostly all of my projects are about bringing attention into the media, raising a global consciousness on the subject, and especially motivating the political sphere and the public sphere in recognizing the urgency of this.
And is that something that's, I mean, is that easy to do? Because obviously when you're out in the middle of effectively nowhere in freezing temperatures, being able to think not only about your own survival, but also about why you're there and taking pictures and that kind of thing to raise that awareness.
Well, I mean, look, it's extraordinary to find yourself in an environment that is so antagonistic, because you come to realize that the Earth itself has no empathy. We're not dealing with an empathetical environment. The empathy is us. Like, we are the link that connects us to the natural cycle. But the Earth itself has no sensibility for humans or ice, as it were.
And what about the whole climate change debate? I mean, on the one hand, things up to maybe a year or so ago were fairly positive, weren't they? We had the Paris agreements. I know you were part of actually being there for those agreements when they were signed as well.
Well, I think it's very important that we get out of this binary thinking of segmenting the ecology from politics. It's more than time to realize that ecology or environment has absolutely everything to do with every sector of our existence in socio-political, socio-economic and geopolitical terms.
But of course, since those Paris climate change accords, we've had Donald Trump and what's happening, particularly in the US. Those climate change deniers still very much out there. How do you combat it?
You know, at this stage, I think it's really like trying to talk to Flat Earth Society people. There is a consensus of opinion. I think we're moving in the right direction. It's non-linear. It's true. Trump is a stain, an ethical and moral stain on the subject. But, you know, with any luck, he'll be gone in 2 years. The reality is, I think that the movement is moving forward, and we're in good shape as far as collective awareness. We just have to accelerate it and really move into that transition into technological and philosophical considerations.
I mean, it's not just Donald Trump, is it? I mean, there's a large swathe of people in the US, also in places like China, who still fight against people who really believe in climate change.
Actually, honestly, I think that the naysayers tend to have more of a platform and a soapbox and a louder bullhorn, because the general consensus is that it's penetrated into considerations. And you mentioned China, and actually China, I think, is the good actor of the future in that they have a way of turning this around, because their government, in a sense, is more autocratic. We have to try and avoid getting into an ecological dictatorship, but that is actually where we're going to have to be headed, in radical action, in order to avoid this sort of apathetical lack of political commitment.
And finally, what next for you, taking it forward? It's got to progress still, hasn't it?
Well, I'm actually launching a clean tech fund. That is one of my projects. And to that effect, I am actually launching a call to entrepreneurs and scientifics and individuals to support that. But my next personal mission is going back to the North Pole, if there is a North Pole to go back to in 2020. And I think it will quite possibly be the last time that a human can walk on the Arctic Sea to reach the North Pole. Fairly, you know, a point of gravitas, I think, in the story of expeditions, but of course as a climate reality as well.
Okay, good to have you with us on the programme, Sebastian Copeland. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you very much.